The ballroom sparkled under crystal chandeliers, and Rebecca smoothed down her emerald green dress one more time before stepping through the doors. This was her night. After 5 years of climbing the corporate ladder at Horizon Industries, she had finally made it to Senior Marketing Director. Tonight's annual gala wasn't just a party. It was where deals were made, partnerships were formed, and reputations were built. She walked in with her head held high, greeting executives and board members like they were old friends. Some of them were. Rebecca had mastered the art of corporate networking. She knew exactly what to say, when to laugh, and how to make herself memorable. People respected her. More importantly, they noticed her. The dining hall was set up beautifully. Round tables covered in white linen, gold-trimmed plates, and fresh flowers at every setting. Rebecca found her assigned table near the front of the room, a prime spot that confirmed her status in the company. She was pleased. This was exactly where she deserved to be. As other guests began to fill the seats around her, Rebecca recognized most of them. Vice presidents, department heads, a few investors she had pitched to in the past. Then someone sat down in the chair directly across from her. She glanced up and paused. He looked completely out of place. The man was probably in his early 30s, wearing a suit that clearly didn't fit him well. The shoulders were too wide, the pants were too long, and the whole thing had that stiff, off-the-rack look that screamed budget shopping. His tie was crooked, and he kept adjusting it nervously like it was strangling him. His hair was a bit messy, and he had the uncomfortable expression of someone who desperately wanted to be anywhere else. Rebecca's colleague, Patricia, leaned over and whispered, "Who's that?" "No idea," Rebecca whispered back. "Probably some tech guy they hired for the computer stuff." The man must have heard them because his cheeks turned slightly pink, but he didn't say anything. He just pulled out his phone and started scrolling through it, avoiding eye contact with everyone at the table. As dinner service began, the conversation around the table flowed easily. People talked about quarterly earnings, upcoming projects, and office gossip. The man in the bad suit stayed quiet, occasionally nodding but never joining in. He seemed nervous every time a waiter approached, like he wasn't used to formal dinners. Rebecca found herself watching him with a mixture of curiosity and judgment. How did someone like that end up at an event like this? This wasn't a casual office party. This was a $500 a plate charity gala with some of the city's most influential business leaders. Everyone here knew the rules. Dress well, speak confidently, and never ever look like you didn't belong. Then it happened. The man reached for his water glass just as a waiter was placing the main course on the table. His elbow knocked into the wine glass beside his plate, and everything seemed to move in slow motion. The glass tipped over, deep red wine spilling across the pristine white tablecloth like blood spreading through fabric. It pooled quickly, dripping onto his lap and splashing onto the table decorations. The conversations around them stopped instantly. People at neighboring tables turned to look. The man's face went from pink to bright red as he grabbed his napkin and tried desperately to soak up the wine, but it was too late. The damage was done. Rebecca felt something bubbling up inside her. It wasn't sympathy. It was opportunity. She had learned early in her career that moments like these defined you. You either faded into the background or you became the person everyone remembered, and Rebecca always chose to be remembered. "Oh my God," she said loudly, her voice carrying across the nearby tables. She stood up slightly, gesturing at the mess with perfectly manicured nails. "Can someone please get the cleaning staff over here? Maybe they can give our guest here a quick lesson on how adults eat at fancy dinners." A few people at the table chuckled nervously. Someone from another table let out a laugh. The man kept his eyes down, still frantically dabbing at the wine with his napkin, but Rebecca wasn't finished. She was on a roll now, and the attention felt good. "Seriously, though," she continued, looking around at the other guests with an exaggerated expression of disbelief. "Do we not have standards anymore? This is a charity gala, not a cafeteria." More laughter rippled through the nearby tables, louder this time. Even Patricia was smiling, though she looked slightly uncomfortable. The man finally looked up at Rebecca. For just a second, their eyes met. There was something in his expression that she couldn't quite read. It wasn't anger or embarrassment exactly. It was something calmer, more measured, like he was filing this moment away for later. Then he stood up slowly, carefully placing his wine-stained napkin on the table. "Please excuse me," he said quietly. His voice was steady, controlled. Without another word, he turned and walked away from the table, disappearing into the crowd near the bar area. The moment he left, the tension broke. People at Rebecca's table started talking again, the incident already becoming a funny story they would tell later. Patricia leaned over and whispered, "That was kind of harsh, don't you think?" Rebecca waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, please. If you can't handle a little embarrassment, you shouldn't be at events like this. It builds character." Deep down, she knew Patricia had a point, but Rebecca had spent too many years fighting for her position to start feeling guilty now. In the corporate world, you were either on top or you were getting stepped on. She had chosen to be on top. As dinner continued and speeches began, Rebecca barely thought about the man in the bad suit. She was too busy networking, laughing at her boss's jokes and making sure everyone saw her in her element. This was her world, and she owned it. When the evening finally ended and people started leaving, Rebecca walked out of the ballroom feeling victorious. She had made an impression tonight. People would remember her wit, her confidence, her presence. Tomorrow at the office, people would probably still be talking about that wine spill and her quick comment. She had no idea that in 3 weeks, her entire world would flip upside down. She had no idea that the man in the bad suit would walk back into her life in a way she could never have imagined, and she definitely had no idea that her moment of cruelty would become the biggest mistake of her career. 3 weeks had passed since the gala, and Rebecca had almost forgotten about the wine incident. Life at Horizon Industries had returned to its normal rhythm of meetings, presentations, and office politics. She was in the middle of reviewing a new campaign proposal when her phone buzzed with an urgent notification. All staff mandatory meeting in the main auditorium. 30 minutes. No exceptions. Rebecca frowned at her screen. Mandatory meetings were rare, and they usually meant one of two things. Either someone important was getting fired, or something big was happening with the company. She saved her work and headed toward the auditorium, joining the stream of confused employees flowing through the hallways. The auditorium was buzzing with nervous energy. People clustered in small groups, whispering theories about what was going on. Rebecca spotted Patricia near the front and made her way over. "Do you know what this is about?" Rebecca asked. Patricia shook her head. "No idea. But I heard the CEO cleared his entire schedule today. Whatever it is, it's huge." They found seats together as more employees filed in. The auditorium was packed. Rebecca couldn't remember the last time she had seen every single department represented in one room. Even the warehouse staff and night shift workers were there. Finally, the lights dimmed slightly and their CEO, Mr. Harrison, walked onto the stage. He was a man in his 60s with gray hair and a usually calm demeanor, but today he looked tense. He gripped the podium and cleared his throat. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice," he began. "I'm going to get straight to the point because I know rumors are probably already spreading. As of this morning, Horizon Industries has been acquired." The room erupted. Gasps, shocked whispers, and even a few shouts of disbelief filled the air. Rebecca felt her stomach drop. Acquired? How was that even possible? There had been no warning, no hints, no leaked emails. Mr. Harrison held up his hand for silence. "I know this is unexpected. Believe me, the board has been working on this deal very quietly for the past 6 months. The company acquiring us is Tech Venture Global, a rapidly growing technology firm that specializes in digital innovation and market expansion." Rebecca had heard of Tech Venture Global. Everyone in the business world had. They had appeared out of nowhere about 5 years ago and had been buying up companies left and right, turning struggling businesses into profitable ventures. But she had never imagined they would be interested in Horizon Industries. "The good news," Mr. Harrison continued, "is that Tech Venture has committed to keeping all current staff for at least the next year. Your jobs are safe. However, there will be changes in leadership and company structure. I want to introduce you to the person who will be overseeing this transition." He gestured toward the side of the stage. "Please welcome the founder and CEO of Tech Venture Global." Rebecca watched as a figure walked onto the stage and her entire world stopped. It was him, the man from the gala. The man who had spilled wine all over the table. The man she had humiliated in front of dozens of people. But he looked completely different now. Gone was the ill-fitting suit and nervous demeanor. He wore a perfectly tailored charcoal gray suit that probably cost more than Rebecca's monthly rent. His hair was styled professionally, and he carried himself with the kind of quiet confidence that only comes from real power. He walked to the podium like he owned the place, which, Rebecca realized with growing horror, he actually did now. "Good morning, everyone," he said, his voice clear and steady. "My name is Alex Chen, and I'm excited to be here today." Alex Chen. The name exploded in Rebecca's mind. She had heard that name before. Alex Chen was famous in tech circles. He had built tech venture from his garage into a multi-billion-dollar empire in just 5 years. Forbes had called him one of the most brilliant young entrepreneurs of the decade. He was worth billions, and she had mocked him at a charity dinner. Rebecca felt the blood drain from her face. Her hands started to shake and she clasped them together in her lap, hoping no one would notice. Beside her, Patricia was leaning forward, completely focused on the stage, oblivious to Rebecca's panic. Alex continued his speech, talking about his vision for the company and the exciting changes ahead. He spoke well, mixing technical details with inspiring language about innovation and growth. The audience seemed captivated, but Rebecca couldn't focus on his words. She was too busy trying to remember every detail of that night. Had he recognized her? Did he know who she was? Of course he did. She had stood up and made sure everyone heard her comments. She had been loud and proud about it. Then, as if the universe was answering her question, Alex's eyes swept across the auditorium. They moved methodically from section to section, acknowledging the crowd. When they reached Rebecca's area, they paused. Just for a second. Maybe two. His expression didn't change, but there was a flicker of recognition in his eyes. He remembered. Rebecca wanted to sink into her chair and disappear. She felt Patricia elbow her gently. "Hey, are you okay? You look pale." "I'm fine," Rebecca whispered, but her voice sounded hollow even to her own ears. After Alex finished his speech, Mr. Harrison returned to the podium to explain the transition timeline. There would be department evaluations, restructuring, and new leadership appointments over the next few months. Everyone would have a chance to meet with the new management team. As he spoke, Rebecca's mind raced through all the possible consequences of her actions. Would she be fired? Demoted? Publicly called out in front of the entire company? The irony wasn't lost on her. She had humiliated him publicly, and now he had the power to do the same to her. Except his version would be much worse because he actually had a reason. The meeting finally ended and people began filing out of the auditorium. The hallways were filled with excited chatter about the acquisition. Some people seemed thrilled about the potential opportunities. Others were worried about the changes ahead. But Rebecca walked in silence, her mind spinning. Patricia caught up with her near the elevators. "Can you believe it? We were just acquired by Alex Chen. Do you know how big this is? He's basically a legend in the business world." "Yeah," Rebecca managed. "It's pretty shocking. I mean, imagine having that kind of success by your early 30s. He must be incredibly smart." Patricia pressed the elevator button. "I wonder what he's really like in person. He seemed pretty down to earth in the meeting." Rebecca thought back to the man sitting nervously at the dinner table, adjusting his crooked tie. That had been the real Alex Chen, she realized. He had been down to earth. He had been trying to blend in, to understand the company culture before making his decision. And she had treated him like garbage. Back at her desk, Rebecca couldn't concentrate. She stared at her computer screen, but the words blurred together. Every few minutes, she checked her email, expecting to see a meeting request from HR or a summons to Alex's office. But nothing came. Not that day, anyway. As she packed up to leave that evening, Rebecca's phone buzzed one final time. It was an email from the executive assistant's office. Her heart nearly stopped as she opened it. Meeting scheduled. Rebecca Torres with Alex Chen and HR Director. Monday, 9 a.m., Conference Room A. 3 days. She had 3 days before she would have to face him. 3 days to prepare for the end of everything she had worked for. The weekend felt like the longest 48 hours of Rebecca's life. She barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Alex's face at that dinner table, wine spreading across the white tablecloth, her own voice echoing in her head. "Can someone please get the cleaning staff over here?" Saturday morning, she sat at her kitchen table with her laptop, trying to work on a resignation letter. Maybe if she quit before the meeting, she could salvage some dignity. At least then she could say she left on her own terms. But every version she wrote sounded either too defensive or too pathetic. By noon, she had 17 drafts and zero confidence in any of them. Her best friend Linda called around 2 in the afternoon. "Hey, I haven't heard from you all week. Want to grab dinner tonight?" "I can't," Rebecca said, staring at her laptop screen. "I'm dealing with something at work." "What kind of something?" Rebecca hesitated. She hadn't told anyone about the gala incident. At the time, it had seemed like just another funny story from a corporate event. Now it felt like evidence of what a terrible person she had become. "It's complicated. I might be losing my job." "What, why?" "You're one of their best people." "Yeah, well, turns out being good at your job doesn't matter if you've been horrible to the wrong person." Rebecca closed her laptop. "I'll tell you about it later. Maybe if I survive Monday." Sunday was even worse. She practiced apologies in the mirror until her own reflection made her sick. She tried to eat but couldn't keep anything down. By evening, she had convinced herself that walking into that meeting would be the hardest thing she had ever done. Monday morning arrived too quickly. Rebecca put on her best professional suit, a navy blue one that had always made her feel powerful. Today, it just felt like armor that wouldn't be thick enough. She arrived at the office 30 minutes early, which was unusual for her. The building felt different somehow. Quieter, more ominous. She went straight to her desk and tried to do some work, but it was pointless. At 8:55, she gathered her notebook and phone, took a deep breath, and headed toward conference room A. Patricia caught her in the hallway. "Hey, where are you going?" "We have that team meeting at 9:30. "I have something else first," Rebecca said, trying to keep her voice steady. "With who?" Rebecca didn't answer. She just kept walking. When she reached conference room A, she paused outside the door. Through the glass panel, she could see Alex sitting at the conference table with Helen from HR. He was looking at some papers, his expression calm and professional. He looked up, saw her standing there, and gestured for her to come in. This was it. Rebecca opened the door and stepped inside. The room suddenly felt very small. "Good morning, Rebecca," Helen said with a professional smile. "Please have a seat." Rebecca sat down across from Alex, carefully placing her notebook on the table. Her hands were shaking slightly, so she folded them in her lap. Alex looked at her for a moment, and she forced herself to meet his eyes. If she was going down, she would at least do it with some dignity. "Thank you for coming," Alex said. His voice was neutral, giving nothing away. "I wanted to talk to you about your future here at Horizon Industries." Here it comes, Rebecca thought. The firing, the public humiliation, everything she deserved. But what Alex said next completely threw her off balance. "I spent this past weekend reviewing employee files," he continued. "Yours in particular caught my attention. Your marketing campaigns over the last 3 years have been impressive. The Stellar Solutions account alone brought in over $4 million in revenue. Your team consistently meets deadlines, and your project success rate is among the highest in the company." Rebecca blinked. Was this some kind of trick? Was he building her up before tearing her down? Alex leaned back in his chair. "I also spent time looking into company culture, talking to employees, reading reviews. Your name came up frequently. Some people admire your work ethic and results. Others find you difficult to work with, intimidating, sometimes cruel." There it was. Rebecca felt her face flush hot. "I'm sure you know why you're here," Alex said, his voice still calm. "The gala. 3 weeks ago. You remember that night?" "Yes," Rebecca said quietly. Her voice sounded small. "Then you remember what you said to me, in front of about 30 people?" It wasn't a question, Rebecca nodded. Her throat felt tight. "I remember." Alex was quiet for a moment, and the silence was worse than anything he could have said. Finally, he spoke again. "I attended that event specifically to observe Horizon's company culture before finalizing the acquisition. I dressed down on purpose. I wanted to see how people treated someone they thought was nobody important. A lot of people ignored me that night. A few were polite. You were the only one who went out of your way to humiliate me." "I'm sorry," Rebecca said, and she meant it. The words felt inadequate, but they were all she had. "What I did was wrong. It was cruel. I have no excuse for it." Helen shifted in her seat but remained silent. This was Alex's show. "You're right," Alex said. "It was cruel. It revealed something about your character that concerns me. But here's the thing, Rebecca. I don't believe one moment defines a person's entire worth. I've made mistakes too. Different ones maybe, but mistakes nonetheless. Rebecca looked up, confused. Where was he going with this? So I'm going to give you a choice, Alex continued. Option 1. You can resign. Today, we'll give you 6 months severance, excellent references based solely on your professional work, and you can walk away with your reputation intact. No one needs to know the details of why you left. Rebecca's heart pounded. That was more generous than she had expected. Way more generous. But he had said option 1, which meant there was an option 2. What's the second option? She asked. Option 2, you stay. You keep your position, your salary, everything. But there are conditions. Alex pulled out a document and slid it across the table. You'll work with an executive coach for the next 6 months. Not because you're bad at your job, but because you need to work on how you treat people, especially people you think are beneath you. Rebecca stared at the document. Additionally, Alex continued, you'll issue a public apology. Not a forced corporate statement, but a real one. You'll stand in front of the people who heard what you said that night and take responsibility for your actions. Rebecca felt tears pricking at her eyes. The old her would have been mortified at crying in a business meeting. But right now she didn't care. And finally, Alex said, your next promotion, whenever that might be, won't be based solely on your results. It'll depend on peer reviews, on how your team actually feels about working with you, on whether you've genuinely changed, not just learned to hide it better. He leaned forward. If you stay, there's no easy path forward. You'll have to earn back trust. You'll have to prove that you can be both excellent at your job and decent to people. But if you do the work, really do it, there's a future for you here. Rebecca looked down at her hands. 6 months ago, she would have chosen option 1 without hesitation. She would have taken the easy way out, the path that let her keep her pride. But something had shifted inside her during those 3 terrible days of waiting. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was exhaustion. Or maybe, for the first time in years, it was actual self-awareness. I want option 2, she said quietly. Alex nodded slowly. Then we start tomorrow. Helen will set you up with Dr. Patterson, your executive coach. The apology will be scheduled for Friday, during the department meeting. That gives you 4 days to prepare. Rebecca stood up on shaky legs. Thank you. I know I don't deserve this chance, but I won't waste it. As she reached the door, Alex spoke one more time. Rebecca, I'm not doing this because I'm nice. I'm doing this because I believe people can change when they're motivated to. Don't prove me wrong. Rebecca nodded and walked out of the conference room. In the hallway, she leaned against the wall and took a deep breath. She wasn't fired. She had been given a second chance. But as the reality sank in, she realized the hard part was just beginning. 4 days until she had to face everyone and admit what she had done, and 6 months of proving she was more than the worst moment of her life. Friday arrived faster than Rebecca wanted. She had spent the last 4 days preparing her apology, writing and rewriting it until the words blurred together. Dr. Patterson, her new executive coach, had advised her to keep it simple and honest. Don't make excuses. Don't over-explain. Just tell the truth and take responsibility. The department meeting was scheduled for 3 in the afternoon. As the time approached, Rebecca felt like she might throw up. She stood outside the conference room, watching through the glass as people filed in. These were her colleagues. Some had worked with her for years. They were about to see her at her most vulnerable. Patricia spotted her and waved her inside. You coming? Meeting's about to start. Rebecca took a breath and walked in. The room was packed. Word had spread that there would be an important announcement. Though most people didn't know what it was about, she saw curious faces, bored expressions, people checking their phones. Normal pre-meeting behavior. Alex was already there, standing at the front of the room. When everyone settled down, he spoke briefly about the transition and some new projects. Then he said, Before we wrap up, Rebecca has something she'd like to share. The room fell silent. All eyes turned to her. Rebecca stood up, her prepared notes shaking slightly in her hand. But when she got to the front of the room, she folded the paper and put it in her pocket. She needed to do this without a script. 3 weeks ago at the company gala, I did something I'm deeply ashamed of. Her voice came out stronger than she expected. Some of you were there. You saw me publicly humiliate someone who had accidentally spilled wine at our table. I made cruel comments about him in front of dozens of people. I treated him like he was beneath me, like he didn't deserve basic respect. She could see people shifting uncomfortably. A few exchanged knowing glances. They remembered. That person was Alex Chen, our new CEO. At the time, I didn't know who he was. But honestly, that's not what matters. It wouldn't have been okay even if he was exactly who I thought he was. Nobody deserves to be treated that way. Rebecca paused, gathering her thoughts. I've spent my whole career believing that being tough meant being mean. That success meant making sure everyone knew I was smarter, better, more important than them. I thought kindness was weakness. And that night, I showed everyone exactly what kind of person that mindset had turned me into. The room was completely silent now. Even the usual phone checkers were paying attention. Alex gave me a choice. I could leave quietly, or I could stay and do the hard work of becoming a better person. I chose to stay not because it's easy, but because I owe it to all of you and to myself to change. She looked around the room, making eye contact with as many people as she could. So I'm sorry. To Alex and to everyone who has had to deal with my behavior over the years. I'm going to do better. That's not a promise, it's a commitment. She sat down, her heart pounding. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Alex started clapping slowly. A few others joined in. It wasn't enthusiastic applause, more like acknowledgement. Rebecca didn't expect forgiveness right away. She didn't deserve it yet. After the meeting, people avoided her in the hallways. She understood. Trust wasn't rebuilt with one apology. Real work started the next week when she began her sessions with Dr. Patterson. The coach was a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes that seemed to see right through any excuse or deflection. Tell me about your childhood, Dr. Patterson said during their first real session. Rebecca almost laughed. Seriously? Are we doing the therapy thing? If you want to understand your behavior, we need to understand where it comes from. So yes, we're doing the therapy thing. Over the next several weeks, Rebecca found herself talking about things she had never discussed with anyone. Growing up as the middle child in a family of 5 kids, always fighting for attention, for recognition. Her older sister was the smart one. Her younger brother was the baby everyone doted on. Rebecca had learned early that the only way to be noticed was to be louder, sharper, more aggressive than everyone else. You learn to survive by dominating, Dr. Patterson said. In your family, at school, and eventually at work. But survival tactics don't always make us better people. Sometimes they just make us lonely. That hit harder than Rebecca expected. She was lonely. She had colleagues but few real friends. She had professional respect but little genuine connection. She had built walls so high that nobody could get close enough to hurt her. But those same walls kept out everything good too. The coaching sessions were brutal. Dr. Patterson didn't let her hide behind her accomplishments or make excuses. Your results don't erase your impact on people, she said bluntly. You can be brilliant and still be destructive. Rebecca started making small changes. Really small ones at first. She learned her assistant's name. Actually learned it, not just the name, but details about her life. Her assistant, Kelly, had 2 kids and was taking online classes at night. Rebecca had worked with her for 2 years and never knew that. She started saying good morning to people in the elevator instead of staring at her phone. She began her emails with actual greetings instead of jumping straight to demands. When someone on her team made a mistake in a presentation, instead of calling them out publicly like she used to, she pulled them aside privately and helped them fix it. It felt awkward at first, unnatural, like she was acting in a play. But slowly something shifted. One afternoon, a junior employee named Tyler nervously approached her desk. Rebecca? I had an idea for the Johnson campaign, but I'm not sure if it's good enough to present. The old Rebecca would have said something like, if you're not sure it's good, why are you wasting my time? But she caught herself. Let's hear it, she said instead, gesturing to a chair. Tyler's idea was actually innovative, a fresh angle she hadn't considered. She told him so, and asked him to develop it further for the next meeting. The look of surprise and pride on his face stuck with her for days. Word slowly spread that something had changed. People started coming to her with ideas again, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. Her team meetings became actual discussions instead of Rebecca telling everyone what to do. Patricia pulled her aside one day. I don't know what's happening with you, but whatever it is, keep doing it. You're like a different person. I'm trying, Rebecca said, and she meant it, but not everyone was convinced. Some colleagues remained skeptical. During one team lunch, someone made a comment about how long her nice phase would last. Rebecca overheard it and it stung. But Dr. Patterson had prepared her for this. People won't trust you immediately. her coach had warned. They've seen who you were for too long. You have to show them consistently over time that the change is real. Some people will never believe it. That's their right. 6 months after the apology, Rebecca led a major campaign for their biggest potential client. It was high pressure, the kind of project that would have turned her into a nightmare boss in the past. But this time she delegated effectively, trusted her team, and gave credit where it was due. When they won the account, her team surprised her with a small celebration. Tyler brought a cake. Kelly hung a congratulations team banner. But what got to Rebecca was the card they all signed. Inside were genuine messages of appreciation, not just for her work, but for her as a person. One message from a team member named Jennifer read, "Thank you for showing us that people really can change. It means more than you know." Rebecca had to excuse herself to the bathroom. She stood there staring at herself in the mirror, and for the first time in months she recognized the person looking back, not the aggressive corporate warrior she had been, not the perfect reformed version she was trying to be. Just herself. Flawed, trying, genuinely different. The victory should have felt amazing. And it did. But what surprised her was that the client win wasn't the best part. The best part was that thank you card from Jennifer. The best part was knowing her team actually wanted to celebrate with her. That evening, Alex stopped by her office. She hadn't spoken to him much over the past months. He had kept his distance, letting her do the work without interference. "Congratulations on the Morrison account," he said from her doorway. "Thank you. It was a team effort." He smiled slightly. "I heard. I also heard about the celebration. Seems like things are different around here." Rebecca nodded. "They are. I am. Good, keep it up." He turned to leave, then paused. "By the way, I'm leaving the company in 3 months. Taking a position elsewhere. But before I go, there's something I want to discuss with you. Stop by my office Monday morning." He left before she could ask what he meant. Rebecca sat there wondering what could possibly come next. She had her job, her changing reputation, her team's growing trust. What more could there be? Monday morning would bring an answer she never expected. Rebecca spent the entire weekend trying not to obsess over what Alex wanted to discuss. She had come so far in the past year. Her relationships with colleagues had improved. Her team actually seemed to enjoy working with her now. But there was still a nervous voice in the back of her mind whispering that it could all fall apart. Monday morning, she arrived at the office early and went straight to Alex's office. His assistant waved her in with a smile. Alex was standing by the window looking out at the city. He turned when she entered and gestured to the chairs by his desk. "Thanks for coming. Please sit." Rebecca sat down, trying to read his expression. He looked relaxed but serious. "Professional, as always. I wanted to talk to you before I made any official announcements," Alex began, sitting across from her. He pulled out a folder from his desk drawer. "As I mentioned, I'm leaving in 3 months. I've been offered a CEO position at a Fortune 500 company. It's an opportunity I can't pass up." "Congratulations," Rebecca said, and she meant it. "They're lucky to have you. Thank you. But that's not why I asked you here." He opened the folder and slid it across the desk toward her. "I'm recommending you for Vice President of Marketing." Rebecca's breath caught in her throat. She stared at the folder like it might disappear if she blinked. "What?" "The board has some concerns, obviously. Your history is well documented, but I wanted you to see this before we move forward." He gestured to the folder. "Go ahead. Open it." With shaking hands, Rebecca opened the folder. Inside were printed emails, reports, and documents. She started reading and her eyes began to water. The first document was a peer review from Tyler, the junior employee who had been nervous to share his ideas months ago. "Rebecca has completely transformed her leadership style. She listens now. She mentors instead of criticizes. She makes people want to work harder, not because they're scared, but because they're inspired." The next was from Kelly, her assistant. "I've worked with Rebecca for 3 years. The first 2 years I dreaded coming to work. This past year has been different. She remembers my kids' names. She asks about my classes. She treats me like a person, not just someone who schedules her meetings. That matters more than I can say." There were more. Jennifer from her team, Patricia from her department, even people from other departments who had noticed the change. One report showed that team morale in her department had increased by 40% since the previous year. Another showed that employee retention had improved significantly. Rebecca looked up at Alex. tears threatening to spill over. I don't know what to say. A year ago, you were brilliant but toxic, Alex said simply. You got results, but you left damage in your wake. Today, you're brilliant and kind. Do you know how rare that combination is? Rebecca shook her head, still processing everything. Most people don't change, Alex continued. They just get better at hiding who they really are. But you did the actual work. You went to every coaching session. You practiced new behaviors even when they felt uncomfortable. You let people see you vulnerable. That takes real courage. You gave me a chance I didn't deserve, Rebecca said quietly. I could have left with my pride intact. Part of me wanted to, but staying and facing what I'd done was the best decision I've ever made. Alex leaned back in his chair. I'm going to be honest with you. The board is split on this promotion. Some members remember the gala incident. They've heard stories about how you used to treat people. They're worried this change isn't permanent. Rebecca felt her hope deflating. But, Alex continued, I've seen something they haven't. I've watched you over this past year. I've seen you fail and try again. I've seen you apologize when you slipped back into old patterns. I've seen you celebrate your team's wins instead of taking all the credit. That's why I'm fighting for this promotion. Why? Rebecca asked. After what I did to you, why would you fight for me? Alex was quiet for a moment, looking thoughtful. Because someone once did the same thing for me. He stood up and walked back to the window. When I was 25, I worked at a startup. I was brilliant, arrogant, and absolutely insufferable. I treated people terribly because I thought my intelligence gave me the right to. Rebecca listened, surprised. This wasn't a story she had ever heard in any article about him. One day I humiliated an intern in front of the whole office. I tore apart his work so brutally that he quit the next day. My boss, a woman named Catherine, called me into her office. I thought she was going to fire me. Instead, she gave me a choice remarkably similar to the one I gave you. Alex turned back to face Rebecca. She told me that talent without character is just destruction with a nice resume. She said I could leave or I could stay and become the kind of person my skills deserved. I stayed. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done, facing how cruel I'd been. But Catherine believed I could change, and that belief made me want to prove her right. What happened to her? Rebecca asked. She passed away 5 years ago. Cancer. But before she died, she told me that watching me grow into a better person was one of her proudest achievements. She said when I found someone like my younger self, I should pay it forward. Alex smiled slightly. You're my pay-it-forward moment, Rebecca. Rebecca felt tears rolling down her cheeks now. She didn't try to hide them. The old Rebecca would have been mortified to cry in front of her boss. The new Rebecca understood that showing emotion wasn't weakness. So here's what happens next, Alex said, returning to his chair. I'm presenting your promotion to the board next week. If they approve, you'll be the youngest VP in company history. But I need to know something first. Are you ready for this? Yes, Rebecca said without hesitation. I am. Good. Because being VP means leading not just your team but multiple departments. You'll be responsible for developing other leaders. Everything you've learned this past year, you'll need to teach it to others. Can you do that? Rebecca thought about Tyler's growing confidence. Kelly's smile when she asked about her day. Jennifer's thank you card. The celebration after they won the Morrison account. All the small moments that had rebuilt her reputation one interaction at a time. I can do that, she said. I want to do that. Alex nodded approvingly. Then we're set. I'll let you know what the board decides by Friday. As Rebecca stood to leave, she paused at the door. Alex, can I ask you something? Of course. That night at the gala when I said those awful things. Why didn't you say something? You could have put me in my place right there, Alex smiled. Because responding to cruelty with more cruelty doesn't change anything. I learned that from Catherine. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is give someone enough rope to either hang themselves or climb to something better. You chose to climb. Rebecca walked out of his office feeling like she was floating. The promotion wasn't guaranteed yet, but that wasn't what mattered most. What mattered was that she had become someone worthy of the opportunity. Someone her team respected not out of fear, but out of genuine appreciation. Friday came and Alex called her back to his office. She knew the answer before he said anything. She could see it in his smile. The board approved it. Congratulations, Vice President Torres. Rebecca shook his hand, professional and composed on the outside, bursting with joy on the inside. Thank you, Alex, for everything. For seeing something in me I didn't see in myself. You did the work, he said. I just opened the door. Now here's my final piece of advice as your soon-to-be former CEO. He looked at her seriously. Someday you're going to meet your own version of you at that gala. Someone talented but cruel. Someone who humiliates people because they can. When that happens, remember this moment. Remember what it felt like to be given a second chance. And then give them the same choice I gave you. Rebecca nodded, understanding the weight of what he was asking. I promise. 3 months later at Alex's farewell party, Rebecca stood at the podium to give a speech. She looked out at the crowd of colleagues, many of whom had witnessed her transformation firsthand. Alex taught me that leadership isn't about being the smartest or the toughest person in the room, she said. It's about making everyone around you better. It's about having the courage to change when you realize you're wrong. And it's about understanding that people are more important than pride. After the party, as people were leaving, Tyler approached her. Hey, Rebecca, I just wanted to say thank you for everything you've taught me this year. About leadership, about growth, about second chances. Rebecca smiled. You know what? Thank you too. You all helped me become someone I'm actually proud to be. Walking to her car that night, Rebecca thought about how different her life looked compared to a year ago. Same job, same city, same ambition. But everything that mattered had changed. She had traded cruelty for kindness, pride for humility, and isolation for genuine connection. The humiliation at the gala had felt like the end of everything, but it had actually been the beginning. The beginning of becoming the person she was always capable of being, if only she'd had the courage to try. And now, whenever she walked into a room, people didn't just respect her accomplishments. They were actually happy to see her. That, Rebecca realized, was the real success. That was worth more than any title or promotion could ever be.